The House will come to order. Prayer by the chaplain.
Let us pray. God of the sprawling universe and the squirming protozoa, we give thanks in our hearts for all of life's breadth. We give thanks for the goodness of this land, for the farmers and bakers and teachers who feed us in body and mind. We give thanks for political freedom that welcomed my mother as an immigrant when her native land was suffering. We give thanks for those who serve in law enforcement, like Sergeant Molnar, who helped our congregation in a scary time, and the judges who showed care for the abused and vulnerable from our community of faith. We give thanks for the religious freedom that allows me now to learn from my friend Mohammed about Muslim prayer and the profound meaning of Assalamu alaikum, peace be with you. We give thanks for children who knows what it means to play, for public health nurses who serve our communities, and for coffee shops. Now we pray you to guide these legislators as they work in their vocation to live out our country's calling of forming a more perfect union, establishing justice, ensuring domestic tranquility, providing for the common defense, promoting the general welfare, and securing the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. Amen.
The chaplain for today is Reverend Hans Jorgensen from St. Timothy Lutheran Church in St. Paul, Minnesota. Pledge of Allegiance. Please remain standing and recite the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The clerk will take the roll. The clerk will close the roll. Quorum is present. The clerk will read the journal of the preceding day.
Journal of the House, 90th Session, 2017, 12th day, St. Paul, Minnesota, Thursday, February 2nd, 2017.
If there is no objection, further reading of the journal will be dispensed with, and the journal will be approved as corrected by the chief clerk. Hearing no objection, the journal is approved as corrected by the chief clerk. Reports of standing committees and divisions. A copy of this order of business has been placed on each member's desk. If there's no objection, the reports will be adopted. Hearing no objection, the reports are adopted. Introduction of bills. The following House files have been offered for introduction today. The chief clerk will report the House files and give them their first reading.
Introduction and first reading of House Files 800 through 893.
First reading, House Files 800 through 893. The member from Lake, Representative Murphy, for what purpose do you rise?
Point of personal privilege.
State your point of personal privilege.
Mr. Speaker, members, we all are here today, and we know the members that came in when we came in, and we will remember them long after they've left or we've left. Dave Battaglia, former mayor of Two Harbors, former teacher before he became a state representative, came in 1977 when I did. And we served together for 18 years. We started out over there in the dog pound. It wasn't the dog pound then. But we were two newcomers out of 101 DFLers. So we weren't very important, let me tell you. But he had a little bit more seniority within the group of 17 that came in that year than I had, because I was second to the last. I was 100. Over the years, we moved a little bit, and we ended up together in the back row, where I was till now. But David Battaglia died last week, and it's very sad. He represented part of the district that I now represent. He was my constituent from 2013 to last Wednesday. While he was here, we mentored each other. He was as old as my oldest brother. He was a brother. And he kind of thought, I can tell her what to do just like I told my sisters what to do. And he did. And I sassed him back the way I sassed my brothers back. He was a husband to Jean, who he adored and missed and wanted to be with all the time. And he was the father of 5 kids. And some of them were still in school when we started. So sometimes he would ride with me, especially after he had his accident in the airplane. He would ride home with me. And Jean would meet him at the corner of Arrowhead and Highway 53, or at my house. But he sure did not like the way I drove. He thought I drove too fast, especially if it was snowing. Actually, what he thought was I should be letting him drive. But that wasn't going to happen in my car. And when it was snowing, especially, those days like last Monday, between Moose Lake and Pine City, a truck would pass, and there's no way you could see because the snow was blowing all up and you couldn't pass very well. Well, when it was like that, and it didn't happen very often, I would step on the gas, and I would try to get through the snow blowing faster. And he'd say, "Don't do that." And I'd say, "I have to because it's so scary. I have to get to the other side." And then he would tell people about that I really needed driving lessons. But on a clear, sunny day, he stopped complaining. I don't know. I think maybe he learned to trust a little bit along the way. But how proud he was of his children. Out of those 5 kids, 4 of them became teachers. And that's what he was, from beginning to end, a teacher. And he was proud of the profession. And he was proud of the kids, especially the kids that changed. And the kids that would say, "Hey, Mr. Battaglia, do you know what I'm doing now?" I knew this because after I became his representative, I would meet him at the coffee shop at Judy's in Two Harbors every month or 6 weeks. And I'd be sitting there with Dave and other teachers from the past, and we would be solving the problems of today because they knew all the answers. But people would come in and stop and tell them what they were doing. And it was because of him and his attitude as a teacher that they became. As a representative, Joan Harrison, who is his LA, said he was a force to be dealt with. And Julian Epson, who was a CA for him at one time, said he was always determined to do what he thought was the right thing to do. He knew what was in his bills. He knew what was in other people's bills. And he read them. And sometimes he talked about them, and when he did, we listened. He was known to be fair, kind, respectful, a gentleman, attentive to detail, and an Iron Ranger. He had a list in his pocket, like they do. But usually, he was pretty even. Ready to listen, and analytical in why or what the other side might be. Those of us that served with him learned from him. And some of us followed him, and some of us said no. But on another issue, we very well may have been on the same side. And he accepted that. And there's always a new day. His greatest mark was in environmental issues, labor management issues. He was chair of environmental finance when Tettaguch, during his time here, Tettaguch, Hill Annex Mine, Grand Portage, Glendalough, and the Cuyuna County State Recreation Area were created. When you go up the shore in the summer and you visit one of these state parks, you will see the Spirit of David as you walk the trails. And think that this land is preserved for all of us. We joined together when the Silver Bay School led to closure. And we thought, wouldn't that, I was on Health and Human Services Finance at that time, and we thought, wouldn't that school, couldn't that be turned into a veterans home? Did all the veterans homes have to be Minneapolis? Maybe we could have one up north, because you know what, we thought? The highway goes both ways. And the Silver Bay Veterans Home is there today. And the veterans that are staying there love it. David leaves us many legacies. And us as a House of Representatives, and as David as an example of a friend, and he should be remembered. Next Saturday will be his funeral at 11 o'clock in the morning at Holy Spirit Catholic Church in Two Harbors. The visitation will be in Two Harbors on Friday evening from 5 to 7. If anyone has a story to share or a question to ask, I will be in room 181 with pictures of House of Representatives, ideas, and bills that he drew when he was here. If you want to join me from 8 o'clock on Wednesday to 8:30 in room 181, if you're anyone that wants to come to tell stories, you can. Mr. Speaker, could we have a moment of silence for Dave Battaglia, representative from Two Harbors?
Members, please rise for a moment of silence. Messages from the Senate.
Message from the Senate. Mr. Speaker, I hereby announce the adoption by the Senate of the following Senate concurrent resolution herewith transmitted. Senate concurrent resolution number 4, Senate concurrent resolution adopting deadlines for the 2017 session. The message is signed Cal R. Ludeman, Secretary of the Senate. The concurrent resolution is being referred to the Committee on Rules and Legislative Administration. Yep.
Calendar for the day. The first bill on the calendar for the day is House File 14. The clerk will report the bill.
House File number 14, number 1 on the calendar for the day, an act relating to capital investment, the first engrossment.
Recognize the bill author, the member from Candy, Ojai, Representative Miller, to introduce your bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, House File 14 is a non-controversial bill. It authorizes the Rural Finance Authority, and it puts $35 million in user finance general obligation bonds into their fund. The Rural Finance Authority was established in 1986 to administer a program under which the state partners with agricultural lenders to provide low-cost funding to Minnesota farmers. In a typical loan, agricultural lenders provide 55%. The RFA provides 45% at a lower interest rate, which allows them to do this. These bonds are user financed, which means that as the bonds go through and are used by the Department of Agriculture, the end user pays off the bonds on the way back, so there is no expense to the state through these. A typical 3/5 majority is not required for these. There is in the Minnesota Constitution, Article 11, Section 5H, which requires specifically for this only a simple majority. I stand for questions, Mr. Speaker.
There is an amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Hansen moves to amend House File number 14, the first engrossment, and the amendment is coded A4.
Recognize the member from Dakota, Representative Hansen, to introduce your amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I move the A4 amendment because the author mentioned in his presentation of House File 14 that it was a non-controversial bill, and there were a number of provisions that I think members identify as non-controversial that have a need that is statewide in nature. This amendment relates to the Board of Water and Soil Resources, and it relates to wetland replacement, a need that I think is non-controversial, but is urgent. The urgent need is that we have a system in Minnesota that when we're doing road construction, if there's an impact on a wetland, we have to mitigate that impact. And we do that through a system of wetland banking. When the dollars aren't there for those wetland banks, that can impact construction. And that construction is critical for making our transportation system work. I know that this particular amendment appropriates $10 million in bond proceeds. And after I've had the amendment drafted, I know that there's some challenges with backing up those bond proceeds, Mr. Speaker. But if I would present this, I know that Representative Fabian, I think, has some comments on what's going to happen during the week.
To the amendment, the member from Roseau, Representative Fabian.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Representative Hansen, for mentioning the importance of the wetland replacement. We are going to try to fast-track a bill through our committee on Thursday. We are appropriating your amendment was for $10 million for the biennium, I believe. We are going to fast-track for fiscal year 17, $5 million, so that we can make sure that any road construction projects out there in our different counties that need wetland replacement credits in order to be able to begin construction, that those funds will be in place over at the Board of Water and Soil Resources so that they can indeed proceed with that funding, or with that project, excuse me.
Representative Hansen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I think the indication here is that this is a need. Maybe we'll have an amendment to make that 10 million in your committee, Representative Fabian, because the need is there. There's a lot of urgency in Minnesota on undone work that didn't happen last year, but is work that needs to be done this year. So with my understanding that this amendment is out of order because we cannot back it up, Representative Knobloch, I think we had discussed that, I would withdraw the amendment.
Representative Hansen withdraws the A4 amendment. There are no further amendments at the desk. The clerk will give the bill its third reading.
Third reading, House File Number 14.
Third reading. Discussion on House File 14. The member from Nicollet, Representative Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the opportunity to speak on the House File 14. You know, it's been a long time since I voted on a bonding bill. The last time I did that, it was a little more chaotic in this chamber, and it's good to see a bonding bill coming forward that represents an urgent need, and that's true in the House File 14. I would be remiss, however, if I didn't suggest to Minnesota and to this body that there are a lot of urgent needs that need bonding in this session, and where I live particularly, that's true of the Minnesota State Hospital, where they need to be reconfigured and rebuilt in order to make a safer environment for the people who work there, and certainly for the people who are served there. And hopefully we can move forward at some point soon with a full bonding bill to meet the needs of Minnesota. But I'm here to talk today about House File 14. There is strong bipartisan support for this bill, and it's because there's strong understanding across both aisles that there's value in supporting family farmers in Minnesota. And what's neat about this bill is it particularly helps those young farmers. We know that the farming population is aging, and we need to help farmers get into this very important business, and it's hard to do. It's a capital-intensive business. And what the Rural Finance Authority offers farmers is the opportunity to access credit to begin farming, to expand their livestock operations, to improve their farming operations, that little nudge that they need to be successful on the land. And it's very helpful there. It's particularly helpful now. As we all know, over the last several years, there's been low commodity prices, and inevitably there's a number of family farmers out there who are looking at their balance sheets right now as they're planning for planting this spring and going, we're in trouble as a family. We need to resolve this. We need to address this. And it's the Rural Finance Authority that really sets up the operations whereby they can. And it's by way that they can reevaluate their loans, redo their loans under another setup so that they can be successful as farmers. So this strong support for this bill is really rooted in the value of family farmers across Minnesota that's understood across both aisles in this chamber. I think it's also successful. It also enjoys a great deal of support because this is a program that works. We hear the cynics and say, oh, government doesn't work, government. Well, take a look at the Rural Finance Authority. This is a program that works. Since 1986, Representative Miller, they've given out 2,888 loans, and only 20 of those have failed. That's a pretty darn good record, it seems to me. And so it's a program that works, and I really believe that Minnesotans will stand proudly and support programs that work. It's also unique, it's also interesting that the Rural Finance Authority is the way they go about their success. It's through a public-private partnership. We hear about those all the time. And again, this is one that works. This is a situation where the state of Minnesota works with community bankers to make sure that credit's available to farmers. In fact, the Rural Finance Authority works with over 400 community banks across the state of Minnesota. And beginning farmers who start out and receive a beginning farmer loan are expected to and required to participate in the Farmer Business Management Program, which will help them be successful farmers. Again, farmers working with their banks who are being supported by the state of Minnesota to make sure that young people can succeed on the farm. This bill will help Minnesota family farmers succeed. It will provide financial stability in the countryside, and it builds on partnerships that makes Minnesota working together to help agriculture thrive throughout Minnesota. I urge a yes vote on House File 14.
Recognize the member from Carleton, Representative Sundin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And I thank the author for bringing this forward. I had the honor of carrying this bill last year, and it was successful, but it met the same fate as so much for the work of this legislature last year. But I'd like to tell you a story about John and Jane Fisher Merritt in Carleton County, and I hope everybody has a story like this in their district. They've established one heck of a organic farm in that county. They retired a couple years ago and turned their farm over to their son, Yannicke, and daughter-in-law, Annie. And there's a third generation coming. And I hope a program like this enables them to keep that farm growing and in the family. I believe that's the intent of this legislation anyway. But again, thank you, Representative Miller, for bringing this forward. But I do have a question if the author will yield.
He will yield. Representative Sundin.
Representative Miller, I enjoyed a stay on the Agricultural Committee. It was one of my favorites, but last year we were faced with actual cuts for the agricultural budget. Can you let us know, or do you have any indication of what the budget would be for the Agriculture Committee this year?
The member from Candy Ojai, Representative Miller.
Excuse me. Mr. Speaker, Representative Sundin, we're going through those processes right now. We're hearing at this time what the department is requesting, and they have requested a slight increase. As you know, when targets come in, that'll kind of indicate where it is that we're going to go from there.
To this bill, Representative Sundin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wish you luck in that committee. I hope you're not left flat-footed like we were last year, looking at cuts for some of the most important businesses in this state, agriculture. Thank you.
Further discussion on the bill, Representative Hausman from Ramsey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I voted for this bill in both committees and will vote for it today. And so I want to be clear that my comments are not to the purpose of the bill, but the context and to perhaps provide some encouragement for us to quickly finish our work. It's hard to pass a bonding bill. And one of the reasons you keep all of the infrastructure needs together into one bill is to figure out how you're going to get those 81 votes. Everyone has a vested interest in seeing that happen. And so I was sort of intrigued by the fact that apparently Representative Fabian said we're going to this week move still another one separately, which is the roads wetland replacement program. And the more we do that, the more we run the risk that there won't be the momentum for 81 votes. One of the things I think I wanted to make very clear today, we've heard the case for the urgency of this one and for the wetland replacement program, but just to give you a little bit of a sense of projects that are in that bill waiting for us to pass it: the Minnesota Security Hospital, Medelia Infrastructure, the St. Cloud Prison, the Camp Ripley Oil Train Derailment Emergency Response Training Center, railroad grade separation at 3 of the most dangerous crossings in Moorhead, Coon Rapids, and Red Wing, housing infrastructure bonds for permanent supportive housing for those who don't have a safe place to sleep at night, the Child and Adolescent Behavioral Health Services in Wilmer, a desperately needed psychiatric hospital facility, the Anoka Metro Regional Treatment Center, the Lanesboro Dam repair where the water is coming through that wall. How much longer will it last? And one very significant one, this begins to demonstrate the amount of federal money that is on the table. And this is the St. Louis River Cleanup Project that currently has 65% federal matching dollars. That's $50 million that's at stake. We have asset preservation at colleges, prisons, veterans' homes to repair leaky roofs. One of those leaky roofs is on the Science Museum. And here's what happens when they're waiting for us to pass a bonding bill. That building couldn't afford to have any more damage, so they had to break the project up into 2 phases. And they're starting on the phase 1 to prevent any further damage, and then are hoping for a phase 2 partnership with us. All of those things raise the cost of projects. So all of the projects will face those sorts of of higher costs. No one said it better than the people who live in the Lewis and Clark area for why there is an urgency. This was in the Daily Globe. And they pointed out that the governor and the House and the Senate, everyone is in support of this, that funding for Lewis and Clark is in the bill. But then they say, the bonding bill is one of the last things that will be done in the legislative session in late May. It's where all the bargaining chips are held. It's the last piece of legislation. But it doesn't have to be that way. There's no reason we can't pass it in February. To suggest that we hold everything as leverage to the last minute is one of the things the public hates just about worse than anything. I don't think I have anything said to me more often by constituents than, Alice, why do you always wait till the last minute for everything? They see the dysfunction of that. They see we run out of time. And so that hasn't worked well for us. And then they go on that they don't want to wait that long to get construction started. That's why they're working on a standalone legislation to free up approximately $8 million in surplus funds. And here's why they want a standalone bill for the $8 million. If it stays in the bonding bill and it passes, it would be late May, and we would lose much, if not all, of the 2017 construction season. That's the point. All of these projects will lose the 2017 construction season. And so there's urgency across the board. We're all in this together. The infrastructure that keeps us healthy and competitive as a state is important to all of us. And when we pass a comprehensive bill that is fair for all regions of the state, we do the state a great service.
Discussion on House File 14. The member from Hennepin, Representative Rosenthal.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, members. Representative Miller, I'm going to vote for your bill today, but I would like to tell you just a little story, and then I'm going to ask you to yield for a question. Last week, the Veterans Affairs Committee was invited for lunch at the Veterans Home. I typed it in my trusty little phone. It took me on this crazy little route and ended up at a bridge that said closed. And so I had to go all the way around the park system to a back road to get into the home. And it's frequently, there's events there, there's marches there, there's, just a lot of people there. And I talked to the director, and he said that it was really, really problematic because some of these veterans weren't being able to get cared for by emergency vehicles. So there's $5 to $7 million to fix this bridge. So Representative Miller, would you yield for a question?
He will yield. Representative Rosenthal.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, members. So if I support this bill today, will you support my bill for the Veterans Home and for our veterans to keep them safe for $5 to $7 million?
Representative Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Rosenthal, I think what needs to be clear here is that I definitely support veterans. I'm a veteran myself. As far as what, I don't think you meant this, but it sounds like a quid pro quo. I don't really want to go there. So, but I definitely support veterans, and I look forward to conversations with them.
Representative Rosenthal.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Representative Miller, I apologize. It did not mean it would come out that way, but we have a real problem at the Veterans Home, and it needs to be addressed. So I hope we can do that very shortly.
The member from Lyon, Representative Swedzinski.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, members. Just want to thank Representative Miller for picking this bill up and moving it through the process. I think the RFA has a lot of great staff. Ryan Rollis does an excellent job over there, as well as others. The conversation kind of got off the trail a little bit, off the track a little bit, talking about the bonding bill from last year. If you all remember just a little bit, we did pass this bill with a lot of other good projects, transportation and other things, and it was definitely derailed over in the Senate. and I just wanted to remind us of that. So appreciate the work we did over in the House when it came to the full bonding bill, and just in case anyone forgot that. Thank you.
Recognize the member from Pope, Representative Anderson P.
Thanks, Mr. Speaker. Members, we've done some good work in this House so far this session, and if we get this bill done today, I think that good work continues. Just want to mention, we've talked about and understand that the commodities are cyclical, and right now farm commodities are in a down cycle, but there's a term going around in ag marketing right now. It has to do with what's called the burn rate, and that's the rate at which farmers are burning through their equity in an effort to get operating money to get the crop in for the year. And this is the time of the year when farmers try to line all those things up, and a lot of us have to do some restructuring, and that's where this bill would really step up and help and provide another area where this could be done. So time is of the essence here. I understand the need for other bills, but today, let's work on this one, get this one done for the farmers of Minnesota. Thanks, Mr. Speaker.
Recognize the member from Cottonwood, Representative Hamilton.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I just want to clarify one thing. There's talking about a budget cut for the Ag Committee. And my initial response was, only in government can you receive about a 42% increase in your budget and have it be considered a cut. Representative Miller, I want to thank you for your leadership on RFA, and also go back to your leadership on avian influenza as well. Thank you for bringing this forward. Last year and 2 years ago, we had a strong focus on emergent diseases and farm safety and food safety. We increased the budget for the Ag Department to make sure we were meeting our statutory requirements as it pertains to food safety, and we had significant investment into research as well. We did some great work here for agriculture the last biennium, and we'll continue doing that moving forward. Thank you, Representative Mellon.
The member from Rice, Representative Bly.
Thank you, Speaker. I'm wondering if Representative Knobloch would yield for a question.
He will yield, Representative Bly.
Thank you. I certainly support the Rural Finance Authority initiative, and would really like to vote for it. I'm a little bit confused, though, about the process that we're going through, and talk about the bill on Thursday. And what does this sort of spending do to the targets and to the process that we're going to go through it? And we don't know yet whether or not we're actually going to have a bonding bill, and we hear many concerns, many issues that should come forward. I just would like to hear kind of what's the plan, or how are we going to proceed going forward, so other members may know if they will get a chance to advance some of these, I would say, emergency issues that they see in their own districts. Thank you.
Member from Sherburne, Representative Knobloch.
Well, you've asked a couple of questions there, I guess, in terms of how this works on the targets. These are user-financed bonds, and consequently, I don't know that these particular bonds really will have much effect on the targets. The bonding bill itself, with general obligation bonds that are paid for by the state, would, of course, affect targets. We have been holding Ways and Means Committee meetings to look at the budget. We held another one this morning to review the governor's recommendations. Over the course of the next 6 weeks or so, we'll have many other hearings, and we'll be taking input from all the other committees to assemble what we believe are the targets that would be appropriate for the state, and then I anticipate the Ways and Means Committee will vote on them and adopt them.
Representative Bly.
Thank you, Representative Knobloch. And then as to the general fund relating to the bill that Representative Fabian mentioned coming up on Thursday, is there an effect on the general fund and the targets and all that?
He will yield. The member from Sherburne, Representative Knobloch.
Mr. Speaker, yes, there is an effect to the general fund on that, just like there was an effect to the general fund with the tax conformity bill that we passed some weeks ago. We can, if you look at Rule 4.05, we don't have to adopt targets before we adopt spending bills here on the House floor. We already spent some general fund money with the tax conformity bill in the range of $21 million, if I remember correctly. And similarly, the money that would be spent on the wetland replacement bill that Representative Fabian's been talking about would be general fund money. It would impact the general fund. I would anticipate that we would be carrying those costs in the environment bill when we eventually put that general fund omnibus bill together.
The member from Meeker, Representative Erdahl.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members, and I just want to echo the thanks to Representative Miller for bringing this bill forward. And while this is a bonding bill, it is not subject to the same restraints as the bonding bill that I expect you will see later on in the session. And I just want to assure those who are concerned that I don't think it's our intent to do a bonding bill by bill.
Any further discussion? The member from Couchiching, Representative Eklund.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Representative Miller, for bringing this bill forward. I am in full support of House File 14, and I urge all my colleagues to vote green. It troubles me that we are carrying these standalone bills when we need a bonding bill. Here's a few examples from my district that are leveraging federal dollars to make the bills happen, or make the projects happen. The Gitchigami Trail project on the North Shore. It takes bicyclists out of the traffic of Highway 61 and moves them around the city of Tofte, taking away addressing the safety issues of having the bicyclists out in traffic. If anybody's been on Highway 61 in July, it's pretty busy. The Voyageurs National Park Clean Water Project. The request is $2 million, and we're leveraging $4.5 million to bring clean water to Voyageurs National Park. The International Falls International Airport has a request in for $3 million, and that request is leveraging $7.7 million of a project that will upgrade and provide safety to the International Falls Airport. Mr. Speaker and members, I urge you to pass House File 14. More importantly, I ask that we pass a bonding bill this year. These projects will put a lot of our fellow Minnesota residents to work, and it is something that our constituents sent us down here to accomplish. Thank you.
Member from Clay, Representative Marquardt.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker and members, and I rise in support of House File 14. This is very important for our farmers who are facing low commodity prices, facing rising property taxes, and quite frankly, have quite a bit of uncertainty about trade agreements into the future. So this is an important bill for our economy out in rural Minnesota. And so let's pass this bill today. Let's pass House File 14 today, and then set as a top priority tomorrow to get a bonding bill out as soon as possible to really address the needs that we have out in rural Minnesota as far as our economy and our quality of life. I know Chair Erdahl heard a couple folks, one from Morris and one from Detroit Lakes, talking about water and wastewater treatment facilities. And the city manager from the city of Morris said they've got about an $18.5 million project to deal with a chlorine problem that they have. They have already spent about $800,000 in design work to get that ready. And in fact, we're ready to go, and then we didn't get a bonding bill last year. And without some help from the state, they're going to have to double their utility rates. The city of Detroit Lakes, they are looking at a wastewater treatment plant, about $36 million. They're ready to go. They're hoping that they can have the design done in March and let bids in July, award them in August, and have ground broken this fall. They need to do that, and without state help, they'd have to raise their utility rates just on wastewater to about $100 a month. That's what the committee heard. And those stories could be told throughout rural Minnesota and throughout the state of Minnesota. If you really are talking about promoting rural development, if you're talking about promoting economic development in rural Minnesota, it's just talk, unless you actually are willing to help these cities foot the bill for the infrastructure that's needed for this economic development. And, I've heard a lot of talk about the bonding bill from last year, and I've heard a lot of blame that has gone around. And let me tell you, Democrats and Republicans were to blame for not getting that bonding bill done last year. You could talk about getting a bonding bill at 11:15, 45 minutes to the end of the hour, or you could talk about the Senate adding on a light rail amendment. But quite frankly, even without all that, the bill was riddled with so many mistakes, it probably wouldn't have been able to be signed into law anyway. But the bottom line is, folks back home, the folks I talk to, they're sick and tired of the blame game. They're sick and tired of that. They want results. They want jobs in their communities. They want important projects in their community. They want to improve their quality of life. And the delays really cost a lot of money. And so members here in the majority, I would ask that we start to move quickly, not to make a bonding bill part of the usual negotiations at the end of session. I don't think it's right that we use rural Minnesotans and others as pawns in our chess game of negotiations at the end. That's not fair to folks. Projects are ready to go now. So members, no more blame game, no more excuses, no more delays. Let's get results for the folks back home. That's what they elected us to do. There are important projects throughout the state that will help our quality of life. Halstead, you've Got Ortonville, Browns Valley, looking at flood mitigation, literally preventing their communities from flooding or having to get flood insurance. You've got the statewide public infrastructure program that's really important to rural Minnesota and around this state. We've got Minority Leader Hortman here is ready to work with leadership to get a bonding bill going. DFL lead Representative Hausman's ready to work further with Representative Erdahl to get things done. We're ready here on the DFL side to work to get a bonding bill done now, not part of any last-minute session. Get that done now if we're going to really talk truly about economic development in rural Minnesota and around the state. Governor Dayton's put out his bill. So let's move now. So let's pass House File 14 today, a very urgent, important bill for our farmers in rural Minnesota, and then let's start working tomorrow as a top priority to get a bonding bill out quickly that will help also many important projects in rural Minnesota and around this state.
Seeing no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll on the bill. Clerk will close the roll. There being 129 ayes and 0 nays, the bill is passed and its title agreed to. The member from Carver, Representative Nash, for what purpose do you rise?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Point of personal privilege.
State your point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. Today I am joined here in the chambers by Jamie McIntoon, his sister Jessa McIntoon-Tice, representatives from McIntoon's Fine Foods. Today, members, we are celebrating their 100th year in operation. They are the oldest grocery store in the state of Minnesota. So we have a House resolution. They are a fantastic family that gives back to the community. They are at every function in my district that you can think of. They employ a lot of great people, including my daughter Sarah, who's here with us today as well, not for this, but for other things. And I wanted to read this resolution. A House resolution honoring McIntoon's Fine Food in Waconia on the occasion of its 100th year in business. Whereas Kim McIntoon is the fourth generation of McIntoons to work in the retail food business. His great-grandfather, August McIntoon, started the butcher shop in Plato, and his son Arthur opened a meat market in Waconia in 1917, which his son Marvin turned into a grocery store in the 1940s. And whereas 2017 will mark McIntoon Fine Foods' 100th year in business, making it the oldest family grocery store in Minnesota. Kim now runs a store with his children, Jamie and Jessa, making this a rare family business to have carried on and thrived through 5 generations. And whereas, under Kim's leadership, McIntoon's Fine Food has maintained a reputation for creating a genuine customer service experience and a deep commitment to community support, including many charitable and community events hosted by McIntoons each year, support for Ridgeview Medical Center, and the donation of many thousands of dollars to alleviate hunger. And whereas, in addition, Kim has served on the Waconia Chamber of Commerce, which he headed for 3 terms, has demonstrated an unwavering commitment to the Minnesota Grocers Association. Kim served on the MGA board for nearly 2 decades, served on the MGA Executive Committee for 18 years, and has served 2 terms as MGA chairman. And whereas Progressive Grocer named Kim its 1995 Grocer of the Year, and the MGA presented him with its 2001 Outstanding Grocer Award. McIntoon's Fine Food has won many national and regional awards, a Beef Merchandising Award, the Minnesota Grown Retailer of the Year Award for single stores, and the Minnesota Department of Agriculture and the MGA's Minnesota-owned Silver Plate Award. And whereas, in recognition of this outstanding service and exemplary contributions to the Minnesota food industry, McIntoons was inducted into the MGA Hall of Fame at the annual conference in Brainerd in 2014, attended by more than 400 members of the food industry. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Committee on Rules and Legislative Administration of the House of Representatives and the State of Minnesota that it congratulates McIntoon's Fine Foods in Waconia on its occasion of the 100th year in business. It applauds the McIntoon family and wishes them the best of the entire McIntoon family for their future. Signed, Kurt Dowd, Joyce Pepp, and Jim Nash. Ladies and gentlemen, if we could, members, give them a round of applause.
The member from Hennepin, Representative Flanagan. For what purpose do you rise?
I rise for a point of personal privilege.
State your point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Speaker. I rise today in continuing acknowledgement of Black History Month and would like to remember Frederick Douglass. Born enslaved in 1818, Frederick Douglass was a prolific writer, orator, feminist, and famous abolitionist. Freed on September 3rd, 1838, Douglass spent most of his life working to end slavery, but was also a champion of equality for all peoples, Black, Native American, Indigenous, and immigrant. As noted by a biographer, Douglass understood that the struggle for emancipation and equality demanded forceful, persistent, and unyielding agitation. Less than a month before his death, when a young Black man solicited his advice to African Americans just starting out in the world, Douglass replied without hesitation, agitate, agitate, agitate. Frederick Douglass held a high and founding principle for our country, freedom. Nothing that concedes without demand. He spoke out strongly against those who claimed to value freedom, but sought to stifle the work of the enslaved and Black abolitionists, in fact, to be free. He said, "If there is no struggle, there is no progress. Those who profess to favor freedom and yet depreciate agitation are people who want crops without plowing the ground. They want rain without thunder and lightning. They want the ocean without the awful roar of its many waters." Thank you.
Member from Couchiching, Representative Eklund. For what purpose do you rise?
Point of personal privilege, Mr. Speaker.
State your point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's my pleasure today to escort my son around the Capitol. I'd like to introduce him to my colleagues, Corey Eklund. He finally got to see what we do down here. So thank you, Mr. Speaker, for
Motions and resolutions. There are copies of the non-controversial motions at the House desk and online. If there's no objection, we'll take action on these motions first. Hearing no objection, the motions prevail. There is a motion at the desk. The clerk will report the motion.
Hertas moves that House File Number 180 be recalled from the Committee on Commerce and Regulatory Reform and be re-referred to the Committee on Job Growth and Energy Affordability Policy and Finance.
Recognize the member from Hennepin, Representative Hertas, to your motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and that is my motion. It was just erroneously referred to the wrong committee. Thank you.
Discussion on the motion. The member from Hennepin, Representative Hortman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's just been the custom and usage of the House when we refer one bill from one committee to another just to state the content of the bill, even when both of the chairs are fine with it. And I know members on your side and members on our side have stopped doing that this year, but I don't want to lose that custom and usage. So, Representative Hertas, can you just tell us what the bill's about?
He will yield. Representative Hertas.
Thank you, Minority Leader. The bill was about basically creating a uniform wage across the state of Minnesota.
The member from Ramsey, Representative Mahoney.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Representative Hertas, isn't it really a bill about taking away what has already been decided by a number of local democracies? Because you're taking away, I think as you say in your bill, before, now, or after. So anything that's gone before of a minimum wage would be replaced by this particular bill.
The member from Hennepin, Representative Hillstrom.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the author of the motion yield to a question?
He will yield. Representative Hillstrom.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Is it your intention to send it back to Commerce, in essence changing the rules surrounding minimum wage and paid sick and safe time? That actually has an impact on Commerce, and I believe that that bill should at some point be heard in Commerce.
Representative Hertas.
Thank you, Representative Hillstrom. I really don't believe this is going too far because there's another bill that's more encompassing that probably will be traveling further than this one. Thank you.
Representative Hillstrom.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If Representative Hertas would continue to yield.
He will yield. Representative Hillstrom.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So Representative Hertas, is this issue going to go through Commerce then when your bill is finished in the committee that it's going to? Will it eventually go back to Commerce?
The member from Hennepin, Representative Hertas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Hillstrom, I guess that would depend what happens in the committee.
Representative Hillstrom.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll just make the point rather than asking him to continue to yield. Members, I believe that this issue is an important issue. I believe that the Commerce Committee is a proper place for this issue to be heard. And I would expect that at some point that this bill should be heard in the Commerce Committee if it continues to move forward.
Any further discussion? Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor of the Hertas motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The motion prevails. Announcements. The member from Roseau, Representative Fabian. Announcements.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members of the GOP members of the Environment, Natural Resources Policy and Finance Committee will have a very, very brief huddle after session in room 300.
The member from Hennepin, Representative Nelson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The members of the DFL caucus for the Government Operations Committee will be caucusing at room 208 East in the State Office Building after session.
The member from Dakota, Representative Hansen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The DFL members of the Environment Committee will meet for a very short period of time in the retiring room after session.
Any further announcements? The member from Hennepin, Representative Pepin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I move that when the House adjourn today, it adjourns until 3:30 p.m., Thursday, February 9th, 2017.
Representative Pepin moves that when the House adjourns today, it adjourns until 3:30 p.m. on Thursday, February 9th, 2017. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The motion prevails. Representative Pepin.
I move that the House do now adjourn.
Representative Pepin moves that the House do now adjourn. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The motion prevails, and the House stands adjourned until 3:30 p.m. on Thursday, February 9th, 2017.